go to the president of the country, who knows that businesses have been unsettled. When I sat down with him last week in Nairobi, the president said it's time to move on from the election battles of the past and put Kenya first.
As you well know, we came from quite an election last year that was contested, and we ended up with 2 elections. So last year was not a very interesting year, let's say, for business. And this is what we're coming out of. And maybe a lot of people have yet to feel the real impact of that. And that's why we've been really keenly focused on ensuring that we create this atmosphere, the political atmosphere of getting people together, of trying to put that year behind us, so that we can focus ourselves on matters growth, on matters development, on matters economy, because this is what matters to our people.
So what policies will that include?
This is one of the key things that we ourselves brought about. We had focused on our first 5 years, really focusing on the hard infrastructure, looking at the railways, looking at the roads, looking at power connectivity, looking at water connectivity. But what we have now agreed and moving now towards is focusing more on the software, the softer aspects, the health aspects, housing aspects, issues related to job creation. These are the elements and the areas that we're looking into, which we believe, tied with what we started doing in our first 4 years, will move the country now to the next level.
I was anchoring many programs during your election, and obviously watching the twists and the turns. How deep are the scars of that election? One person said to me the other day here, we're a really peaceful and gentle country who everybody gets on until there's an election. Would you agree with that?
And that is, I believe, what we're trying to come out of. That's why we've been really focusing ourselves on working together, even with the opposition leaders, and saying Kenya comes first. We can't always go through these cyclical 5-year periods where we're talking about elections, we're fighting over elections, we are conflicted as a society. We've got to be able to move, and that actually is the basis of the partnership that we have actually agreed on with the leader who actually we were competing against last year. And we've said, look, we don't have to always agree on everything, but we can agree on things Kenya. And we can agree that this issue of cyclical elections has to come to an end.
You're raising money, you've got high debts. The country has a fairly high debt to GDP ratio at the moment. And much of that money, the largest part of the bilateral debt, is to China.
China, as well as to many other institutions as well.
So are you comfortable with the increasing burden that this country, the increased debt that this country has to China? Is China a risk?
What would worry me is if the debt that we have incurred has gone into the current expenditure, has gone into paying salaries, has gone into paying salaries or electricity bills and so on and so forth. But what we have utilized our debt for is to close the infrastructure gap. And anybody coming into Nairobi after 10 years, just Nairobi alone, let's not talk about the rest of the country, will be able to note that the number of roads that we've been able to do, the new railway lines that we've been able to do, all aimed at both improving business and increasing job opportunities for our young men and women. The number of people we have moved as a country in 10 years, from 32% of our people connected to the electricity grid, we are now closing to 65% of our population.
My point is not the money being borrowed, it's who's doing the lending, China. You're putting yourself in Beijing's debt.
We are borrowing from China. We have borrowed from the United States. We have borrowed. Our health care system is money that is being, we're working together with companies like General Electric. They are who are the backbone of what we're doing in our health sector. When it comes to energy, we are working very closely with AFD, the World Bank, the World Bank and the African Development.
The criticism is, though, that China has another agenda. You're familiar with these.
We are familiar with those arguments, but our position is a very clear one. We have an infrastructure gap that we need to fill, and we are going to work with our partners across the globe who are willing to partner and to work with us to help us achieve our social economic agenda. Because Japan, for example, is our biggest lender when it comes to all our port developments. Today, Mombasa Port wouldn't be without the support of Japan. When we talk about electricity and electricity generation, we wouldn't be where we are without the support of AFD of France. So why are we focusing ourselves only on one lender? Actually, to me,
you know the reason
as far as I am concerned, we have a very healthy mix of debt from the multilateral lenders, who are basically the World Bank and the African Development Bank, to bilateral lending, like I said, Japan, China, France, all who are participating and working with us to help us achieve our objectives.
The argument is they don't have the same agenda that President Xi might have in terms of bringing Africa within the greater sphere of influence of China.
We are looking at it, like I said, from our Kenyan perspective. And our Kenyan perspective is that we have a development agenda, we have a social agenda, we have an economic agenda, and we are willing to partner with all countries that help us achieve our objective.
Your term of office ends in, what?
2022.
2022. You've said that the Constitution prevents you from standing again. Are you going to try and seek to change the Constitution? Now, on your birthday, a simple yes or no will do on that one.
No.
And when anybody says, oh, we want you to stay, we want you to stay, you'll say, no, the Constitution says it. I'm not having a third term.
Not interested in a third term.
Didn't ask you whether you're interested. If asked, would you serve?
No.
That's a clear no?
No.
You sure?
Absolutely.
You're not going to do a Mike Bloomberg and suddenly change the law?
People are talking about constitutional change, but they're talking about constitutional change not necessarily because they're desirous for the president to seek a third term. They're talking about constitutional change because of issues related to the costs of running this new constitution, et cetera, et cetera. That's the issues that are on the table.
Well, it doesn't get clearer than that. At least I think it doesn't get clearer than that. Let's wait and see if and when in 2 or 3 years' time there's a bigger wiggle room that the president goes through. But at the moment, it seems clear. He says no third term. An historic this morning, a landing for Kenya Airways after it completed its first direct flight from Nairobi to New York City. The chief executive, Sebastian, is with me. Sebastian Mikosh is with me. We'll talk about your flight
good afternoon.
after the break.
Okay.
You're still awake?
Yeah, I am.
Just barely.